sessió d'aquest matí la dedicarem a discutir l'experiència dels països bàltics i primer de tot donar una càlida benvinguda als nostres ponents. A warm welcome to all these high-level panelists we are to enjoy here today. Agrair també els esforços organitzatius que ha fet la Universitat Oberta de Catalunya, la Fundació CatDem, en tirar endavant tot aquest seguit d'activitats, de jornades que estem vivint aquí. I també a la Stockholm School of Economics de Riga, la seva col·laboració que ha fet possible en bona part que avui estiguem aquí seguint aquest seminari. Com sabeu, darrere l'etiqueta de les repúbliques bàltiques s'amaguen tres estats de dimensions similars que comparteixen, sens dubte, moltes característiques, tant socials com econòmiques i també històriques, però al mateix temps que cadascun d'aquests estats té les seves pròpies similaritats, la seva pròpia estructura econòmica, les seves pròpies característiques culturals en termes de llengua, de població, etc. Les tres repúbliques van recuperar la seva sobirania, la seva independència al mateix any 90, que es va concretar l'any següent, en el context del col·lapse de la Unió Soviètica i en bona mesura podríem dir que provocant-lo, fins i tot, o si més no accelerant aquest procés. Van entrar ràpidament en un procés d'integració regional, de modernització econòmica, de reformes, liberalitzant la seva economia, privatitzant empreses públiques, etc. I això les va portar a unes taxes de creixement molt accelerades durant la darrera dècada del segle passat i les va fer ràpidament integrar amb aquestes noves institucions, amb aquestes institucions regionals des de la Unió Europea, però també a nivell mundial. Les tres repúbliques van accedir, com sabeu, a la Unió Europea el 2004 i també van ser de les primeres que van començar a experimentar els efectes d'aquesta crisi en la qual estem immersos ara i estem discutint aquí aquests dies. I en ser de les primeres he recuperat una frase que va aparèixer el mateix 2008 on Paul Krugman es referia a Letònia com la nova Argentina d'Europa. Això era tan sols fa 3 anys enrere. La bombolla immobiliària, la crisi del deute sobirà, l'increment de l'atur en aquestes repúbliques les va situar en un context de moltes dificultats, de nous reajustaments i ja ens trobem que el darrer any ja comencen a aparèixer allò que coneixem com els green shoots o els brots verds, que semblen apuntar a un horitzó una mica més optimista de cara als propers anys, però estic segur que això serà un dels elements que avui discutirem aquí. Comptem amb 3 ponents que són experts reconeguts en l'àmbit de l'economia i en concret amb bona experiència amb el cas de les repúbliques bàltiques. El doctor Raul Eamets.
My presentation will have 2 parts. In the first part I will illustrate what happened, how we cope with economic crisis and what were the consequences to the labor market, because labor market is my major area. And then in the second part I would set some rather provocative questions about current situation. So there are like 2 parts in this sense. So very briefly, if we look back to early 90s when Estonia got independence, our government made some very strong political commitments about general economic policies like annually balanced state budget. That was written to law. So we had a fixed exchange rate and currency support type of monetary system. We had very flexible labor markets, very liberal trade policy. The first customs were introduced just after year 2000. High speed of privatization, flat income tax and low tax burden, and no subsidies to agriculture before 2000. So these decisions in a combination made rather unique opportunity to shift quickly from the planned economy to the market economy, and Estonia did quite well. Our average growth rate in from 2000 to 2007 was around 9-10%, which was among the highest in EU. But these kind of policy options, which in a way simplified the opportunities of the government to interfere to the economy, has a kind of another side or dark side as well. So the one thing is that we see with this kind of fiscal policy very strong pro-cyclical effect when during the economic boom, government expenditures increased almost 20% per year, accelerating the boom. And during the recession, government cuts actually made recession deeper. So Estonia was riding like in American mountains in an amusement park. When it is growth, then it's very high. When it's drop, then it's very high as well. Currency board means that central bank has very limited options to affect money supply, and as Estonian banking system basically belongs to Scandinavian banks, we have only one Estonian, so-called Estonian bank, but the market share is 0.5%. So our banks whose main quarters were located in Stockholm and other capitals of Scandinavia, they got unlimited resources to create a credit boom, and government has central bank has virtually no control over that. This also caused relatively high inflation, because if you can't control money supply, you can't control inflation. So low tax burden gives few resources to government, and economy was balanced through the labor market, and I will show this in a minute. So here we have a picture about economic growth. We see all three Baltic countries made very, very fast growth, and then we had a huge drop, as I said. But the interesting thing is that if we look, unfortunately I can't show from this when I'm sitting here, but if you look the countries which are down here, these are old EU member states, then basically we can say that all countries ended up in year 2005. Simply, for some countries like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, the growth rate was very high and the drop was very high. But the same picture is true for Sweden, UK, some other European countries. I mean, simply the growth rate was lower and the drop was lower, but they were back in 2005 as well. So in this sense, we landed in the same position, all EU countries. There are some exceptions like Slovakia, for instance, where probably car industry and the introduction of euro helped to recover much faster, and the drop was rather low. And Poland is missing from this picture. If we look what happened in the labor market as a consequence of this kind of very fast increase, we can see how productivity and wage gap started to increase in 2007. And as everybody will understand who have studied some simple microeconomics, that this kind of situation will cause sooner or later dismissals, because firms simply can't afford to pay so high wages if productivity is not increasing with the same rate. So basically what happened was that second part of 2008, massive dismissals took place in Estonia, and unemployment rocketed to the sky. Here are all three Baltic countries. The red line is okay, more or less read, at least in my screen, was going up from 4% to almost 20%. And we see very similar pattern in Lithuania and Latvia as well. So this is our first evidence that labor market reacted very quickly, and they should be very, very flexible. If we look different sectors, then we have very amazing numbers of increase in 2005, 2006, particularly in construction sector. I don't know how much you can see from here, but if you look construction sector employment change in 2005, 2007, you can see numbers for Estonia like 68% of increase. For Latvia, 39%, and for Lithuania, 29% of increase. And of course, when the recession came, these sectors suffered most. The biggest drop in construction was in Latvia, followed by Estonia and Lithuania. So this was one evidence of the flexibility, that employment declined and unemployment increased. As union intensity and collective bargaining coverage is very low in Baltic countries, in Estonia, trade union intensity is 7%, and collective bargaining coverage rate is less than 25%. So basically, these kind of situation enables to cut salaries in Latvia by 20% in a public institution. In Estonia, 10%. Total salary income, Estonian population will decreased basically about 10 billion Estonian crown, which is around 4% of GDP. This is huge income drop. So we can see, of course, that it was very high increase before that. For instance, in 2007, nominal wages grew in Estonia by 20%, in Latvia by 31%. And we can see nominal wage decline in 2009 by 5% in Estonia and 4% in Latvia and Lithuania. And this continued actually in 2010 as well, as a wage decline. Estonia introduced 2 restrictive supplementary budgets in 2009, so 10.6% cut in operational expenditures in central government, reduction of the annual pension increase. So there was changes in legislation concerning health insurance, and the health insurance fund were reduced towards more own responsibility. Stricter limits to the borrowing by municipalities, suspending contribution to the second pillar of pension system. There was a big cuts in the public sector in all terms. So here's a picture where we have still prognosis for 2009-2010, but basically the point is that we had a budget surplus in 2002-2007, and 2008 we had first-time deficit, and because of these very heavy cuts, government managed to keep deficit under control also in 2009-2010. The actual budget deficit in 2009 was only 1.4%. If the government would haven't done anything, then we would have seen this picture where for 2009 the deficit would have been went to -11, and for 2010 to -13%. So basically we'll have another case here. But luckily government managed to keep budget balance under control. And we can see that recovery is speeding up today. The bottom of the recession was in the second quarter of 2009. These are quarterly GDP compared to the previous year, same quarter, so annual change in a way. And we can see that the last numbers, which are available for 2010, indicate that that was 6.7% of increase. Of course, with these kind of statistics, you should be careful because the base with what you compare was very low. But still, it shows nice recovery and things are going up already. So if we, in a way, compare policy responses in Baltic countries versus EU 15, then we can see that our decisions were quite vice versa what old member states did. Government expenditures were reduced, government investments were reduced, direct taxes were increased, and public pensions were declined in Latvia, for instance. In old EU member states, we can see the opposite picture. Government expenditure increased, direct taxes declined, and so on. Which means that compared with the old EU countries, Baltic countries decided to shift all the burden of the crisis to today's taxpayers' shoulders. While in old EU member states, the burden of the crisis were shifted to the next generation, because you have to pay these loans back. So I hope that this will actually give to Baltic countries some advantages in competitiveness in the future, because the debt burden is pretty low. In Estonia, the governmental debt is around 10% of GDP. To sum up this part, so we must say that Estonia has very limited policy instruments to stabilize the economy. So labor market was a kind of buffer for macroeconomic adjustment. What was done was employment was cut down, working hours was cut down, and wages were cut down. So labor market adjusted in all different components. Negative side of this kind of adjustment is, of course, that we have fairly high unemployment rate at the moment, 14%. And it is socially costly, and it will be long-term unemployment. Because from the other side, crisis in a way increased competitiveness and forced restructuring. So firms who will continue after crisis, they are much more effective, and the productivity increased a lot. So we see at the moment in Estonia jobless growth. Growth rate is going up, unemployment is staying high. In a way, it's inevitable, because we want to change our economic structure from the low-cost economy to the knowledge economy. And this is the only way how to do it. It's very painful, but I don't see any other ways. So, some comments and questions about current state of the art. And here, as I said, I try to be a little bit provocative, and I have a lot of questions, but not so many answers. Estonia is participating in the economic stabilization mechanism. And we're not sure that all participants wish stabilization. They really want changes. We heard this from yesterday's presentations as well. Do we expect some losses from the whole process? And actually, who will cover the costs eventually? Do we focus in our actions to preventing activities, or we deal with consequences only? So far, it looks like we're dealing only with consequences. And how much we have, it's more philosophical question, how much we have to interfere to market actions at all. And for us, for Estonia, big issue is how to keep those countries who manage with cuts and restructuring still be motivated. In a way, for Catalonia, that would be a very reasonable question, because we saw yesterday the picture how much Catalonia income level differ from the rest of Spain. And as I asked from your president, 9% of GDP is given to the central government in order to be redistributed. How that will motivate changes in your country. That's a very big issue. Of course, we can always say that as far as Germans are ready to pay, everything will go on. Because if we look at the contribution to the stabilization fund, total number is 620 euros. Germany part is 168 billion euros. Estonian part is rather tiny, 1.2 billion. But from the other side, if you look at the right-hand side table, we can see that if you look at the share to the GDP, Estonia contributes 8.6% of GDP to stabilization mechanism. This is fairly high proportion. Actually, it is more or less the same what Catalonia is contributing to the Madrid, as I just now noticed. And if you look the second column of the table, then we see that that percent to the GDP in Estonia, it was, and these are a bit, 7.2%. Today it has increased slightly, as I said, it is around 10%, but still it is very, very low. So basically those who were behaving as responsible governments and responsible countries, they in a way are punished because they have to pay more in order to save others. These pictures you have seen basically that if you look at public debt, Greece, Italy, Portugal, Euro area itself, all have debt share more than 60% of GDP. The same is true if we look at budget balance. We see big deficits here in many, many countries. So that leads me, in a way, to the final questions that why to support those who present incorrect data and who do not accept any budget restrictions? Why we, and we means European Union, we are making rules, but we don't follow them? These two slides illustrate it very well. I mean, nobody's following these master criteria except Estonia and Luxembourg, and there was one more country, Sweden probably. But yeah, Sweden is not in EU, in Eurozone. So, and why we introduce sanctions if we never implement them? Answer could be solidarity, and my question is solidarity to whom? Whether we support countries? No. In reality, we support banking system. So it's very painful question, and I haven't seen really answers to these questions. We are making only plans. So, to conclude, to get budget back to the balance, is it mission impossible? Perhaps. There are some lessons from Estonia, and I don't know how much they are transferable to the Spanish or Greece or Ireland case. First, you need to have very strong political commitment. And in Estonian case, that was introduction of euro. Then issue is perhaps you need to be small. I don't know, this is a question mark. Definitely you need to have very strong government who manage all these cuts and manage to convince public. And ironically, perhaps this is a little bit cynical point here, but you need to have weak trade unions, because then you have less public unrest. In Estonia, where budget was cut by 9%, there was no demonstration at all. But we all know what happened in Greece when they planned 4% budget cuts. And you need to have, in my opinion, very flexible labor market. So, anyway, thank you for attention.